warm welcome to a Podful of Saints on Wednesday, the 21st of September 2022. And it's getting cloudy outside. It's much in the mood down at Clarence Park at the moment, actually. Got myself, David Tavener, over there, smiling away, is Jake Ellacott.
Hello, Dave. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well.
And somewhere else, we've got Lee Wood. Are you smiling, Lee?
The tears are real. The tears are real. I wouldn't say I'm smiling, right? I have to say no. Anyway, David, Jacob, hello, everyone. How are we?
We're very well, and we're going to feel a lot worse in about half an hour. Right, we've got two FA Cup ties to look back on. Last Saturday at Clarence Park, our 300th FA Cup tie. A side 2 divisions lower than us, A.F.C. Sudbury, admittedly unbeaten, their first 8 games going into that one. Our form, good away from home, dodgy at home. You wouldn't have known, all right, we had a lot of possession, but you wouldn't have known we were 2 divisions higher than them. I thought we had a lot of the ball. We just didn't create anything, did we?
No, we didn't at all. But isn't that what we've been saying all season? So I don't see why it would change in the FA Cup, to be honest. They might be 2 divisions below, but they're a good side. And that, got to the first round last year. I think in the podcast we last did before a lot of world events happened, we sort of touched upon it would be a tough tie. And I think it proved to be. And I think, let's be honest, George Morrall coming on, he sort of got us out of jail, really, didn't he, towards the end? Because we didn't really look like scoring until he came on.
No, as a one incident, we might as well clear it up just before half time. From the side of the pitch, some thought he went in when Sean Jeffers had that header. The keeper, Josh Blunkle, pushed it up against the underside of the bar and it dropped down. Some thought over the line, some thought not. You two, I guess, were behind the goal.
I didn't think it was over the line, so it looked pretty much on the line perfectly. The only thing that made it look like it was the goalkeeper actually seemed to stop and think, oh, it's not really worth getting that. That's gone behind me, until he realised, oh, wait, it's not actually over the line. But no, definitely wasn't over. And to be honest, it probably would have been a bit harsh on Sudbury for us to go 1 up at that point.
Yeah. Were you there Saturday, Lee?
I was not, David. I was at a wedding. I was at a wedding of lifelong City fan James Edwards, along with a few other diehard City Saints. So obviously, so diehard, we weren't out even at the game. So and I watched the highlights. We didn't seem to have any spark, did we? I mean, I know I'm sort of saying this as though it's a total shock to everyone watching this, but I don't know what's going on. I mean, it was just a lack of energy. And I think going back to last podcast, I knew the game would be hard, but I still thought we had enough to win. And at the minute, we haven't got enough to be getting into games at all. We only seem to be responding when we go a goal down or even more. So, it is a great concern.
We haven't got confidence. We don't seem to have it. And you can understand it if confidence is knocked, but we don't have it to attack teams. As you say, we came into it, put a bit more oomph into it once we were behind. And as we know, previous 19 times we'd conceded the first goal, we'd lost. Managed to turn that round on Saturday with George's late goal. So the psychology is wrong. Is it the team tactics that are wrong? But we're going to come on to all this, I think, during the show. Is there anything positive we can take from last Saturday's game other than George Morrall's goal?
Honestly, George, brilliant to see him score like that. He absolutely deserved it. Apart from that, though, not much. Again, it is really difficult, for people. Actually, one good thing is Billy Minter's up on the wall now in Clarence Park, isn't he? He's got a picture. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. But apart from that, no, not much. And when you're going up against a side 2 leagues below in the FA Cup, it's not a good sign, is it, when there's no positives at all from the game?
We had so much of the ball. We had a fair bit last night as well. But we're going across the pitch in an arc. We're going back across the pitch in an arc. No one is prepared to take the opposition on. If they put a couple of men there, we've said this so many times, they put a couple of men there, they stop us and we go backwards. It seems to be rule number 1 is don't lose the ball, don't lose the game. The thought of winning the game doesn't seem to come into it.
No, and sorry, Lee, I say we've had a few people mention to us, like, how much does it stem from the midfield? The lack of creativity in there, lack of anyone that can really play the ball. if we're honest. And I think that's a issue at the heart of the team that hasn't been addressed. And I think, you know, you could probably see it coming, and nothing's been done about it yet. And something needs to be if we're going to kick on at all this season at all.
Well, I think we're going to come on to all that in a minute. Let's get the replay out of the way. And you two made a wise decision not to be there. I guess Lee was on honeymoon with Eggy.
Don't know how Emily would feel about
that. Well, we'd like to celebrate because it was Ian Allinson's 300th game as manager of Albans City. Unfortunately, we've got a muller over our 350th 2-1 defeat. So it was a good night for the Yellow and Blues. They won. Unfortunately, we were in white and black. And really, again, it was like Saturday. We had plenty of the ball, but we had no threat. They could have been 2 or 3-0 up at half time. They squandered a couple of really good chances first half, maybe 3. And when they went ahead, 2 excellent goals, executed them well. We didn't listen to Ian's interview afterwards. We didn't do as he had told the players. They simply weren't listening. Well, he didn't act out what he told them, and we got caught both times. But that doesn't matter. If we're not going to score goals, it doesn't matter how many we concede, because we ain't going to win games. All right, it's the first time this season we've actually let 2 in the game, which is quite surprising. It's also credit to a defence and a goalkeeper. But we saw it again. Going forward, there are massive problems. There's no creativity. It's just so staid. There's no speed. And without speed, you're going to struggle anyway. But there's no creativity. It's all pre-programmed, it seems to be. I've been told, get the ball, keep the ball.
Taz, I think that, I mean, we have a very defeatist attitude, this mentality that we've got, you know, before we get pulled up by the positivity police, because, you know, we've got our wrists slapped for being a little bit down on the team. And one thing I will say is that we will give praise to the highest order when it's due. And at the minute, there's nothing happening at the club which is warranted of such high praise. And because the thing on the pitch, you know, I was speaking to one of the local landlords. Yes, shock. I was in the pub talking about football. But he said, we've got no match winners. We've got no match winners. And it's almost he now feels, because he has a Friday night shift, and then he looks forward to Saturday afternoons, leaving the pub, coming down to the city and watching the game before he's got to go back on to the Saturday shift, which is obviously his busiest time. He dreads it now. He doesn't want to come down anymore, because he wants to support local, you know, and he's the one that had like the city beer mats all over his tables, and he had the cut posters up. But the thing is, even you've got local businesses even not buying into what the product is now, you know. And yes, the positivity police will be on our backs again this week, but ultimately that's got to be earned. Praise has to be earned, right? Games have to be earned. Like, you know, players, they're not good enough. We've got no match winners, and this is a serious rock, boys, happening through our club at the minute.
We do have one match winner, as we know, in Sean Jeffers, but he scored in 1 game this season and only 4 of the past 21 games, which is a pretty scary statistic for your main man. He's joint top scorer with midfielder Karen Wiltshire now. He's also got 2. Now, is it Sean, or are our tactics wrong? Or are the players in the team not good enough around him? We might as well have a look at that. Is it the team that's not strong enough, or the tactics that are wrong?
I think you have to look at what Ian said on his post-match last night. It's very sad to see all this unfolding before our eyes, especially someone that I've worked very, very closely with over sort of 4 years. Ian's always been his heart on his sleeve, very honest sort of fella. I think last night you saw the ravages of the last 10 months just come crashing down in his post-match, because he basically said it himself. The players aren't good enough. The players aren't going to, he's going to look at investment. The lack of investment at the start of the season, and maybe the recruitment of those certain players, wasn't up to much. And he said it himself. He said the players aren't good enough. He's going to have to look at shipping some of them out. You know, instead of building on the foundation from the Forest Green game, we're now just sort of filtering through the rubble of what could have been, because that's where it ends, fellas. 10 months of bang averageness. You know, we haven't produced a spate of games. And I've been reading with interest about Ian's future on the socials, and you know, you can take it with a pinch of salt. People do overreact at times, but I tell you what, there's got to be some justification in people, because the shouts are getting louder and more frequent. You said yourself, Tabs, a few pods ago that you don't think the owners are going to sort of pull the plug anytime soon, but I think the one thing where they're going to start getting involved is when crowds start to dwindle more than what they are now, because for them, it's about, you know, they're thinking about their global digital platforms and, you know, the social media aspect of it. It's all about perception rather than productivity. You know, they're focused. We touched on this many, many times. You've got to look at the here and now. You've got to look at the football, because they've left the football behind. They've been more worried about what is going on off the pitch and less worried about giving Ian the arsenal that he needs to take us forward. And at the minute, you can have nice graphics, 300 appearance, you know, graphics, but are we going to sort of live to see a 350? The way it's going to go, Tabs, I doubt it, mate.
Sorry to butt in before you do, Jake. You say about giving him the arsenal to do the job. You look at our signings since Forest Green, and he's made far fewer signings than he's done it in the same period on previous seasons. And you're asking why? Because that side needed strengthening then. And in the past, he would have gone out and done it. And we didn't do it last season. In the summer, we were very muted in the transfer market, really. The players we brought in, very low in numbers. The number of trialists, normal probably. And so people are saying, well, they can't see an investment on the pitch, yet they can see an increasing number of people off the pitch getting paid. Goodness knows how many full-timers we've got down there now. So money's going off the pitch and they're not seeing it on the pitch. So you can understand supporters' frustration.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the only sort of investment on the pitch I've seen was probably that contract for Sean Jeffers over the summer. I think at a time when we know that other clubs were looking at him and giving him decent offers. But apart from that, what else have we seen really? A couple of midfield players. There's nothing really that has really excited us. But the thing is, though, we've pointed it out. Fans have pointed it out to us. We all saw the issues coming, didn't we? Even in the summer when we had Hercules on the trial, someone that was quick and pacey and direct, we thought that could be a decent option for the squad. He went. We thought, oh, what options do we have like that now? None really. And of course, we've had injury issues. You know, when you lose players like Mitch and Romeo, you know, two players that were fairly creative for us last season, you're going to have issues. But, you know, the club have known that both of them are out long term. You know, Mitch's might have been a surprise, but it still is long term. And Romeo hasn't played football since February. These players are out the squad. You've got to take action to either replace them temporarily or permanently or find something. And also in that as well, I think you agree, Ian's got to have a bit more backing from the owners. But the lack of inaction on the pitch and lack of investment really does smack of just pretty happy of where we are and pretty content, which is, as a fan, really disheartening. I wouldn't mind if we played exciting football and lost, you know, 4-3 one week and 1-5-4 the other week. I wouldn't mind that at all. I want to be entertained. I want to love this club. But it's just really disheartening on the pitch at the minute, isn't it?
You talk about investment there. We haven't seen a lot of investment that we touched on. So if Ian went to the board now and said that this side needs strengthening, I've got players on contract, I can't get rid of them or whatever. Can you really see them doing it?
I think, like Lee says, I think if home attendances keep dropping, and I think if we drift towards that bottom four, I think potentially. But you know, I suppose what they might say is it's still very early days. But that, you know, I think there are some very core issues in this squad which everyone can see, and like Lee says, you can see it on the social media, all the comments everywhere, and it's those core issues that need to be addressed. And whether they want to invest or not, they need to address them. Otherwise, the club is going to drop like a stone this season.
I think it was it was telling. I listened to an amazing podcast, and there was a Burnley fan on there, and she was talking about Sean Dyche and his legacy he left at the club. And they asked how did she feel once he left, he got sacked, etc. And the thing is, everything's got a shelf life, you know, and I think you have to look at the legacy that Ian has given the club, because as he can only do what he's been given. But the thing is, everything's got a shelf life, and things just do need a reboot from time to time. And yes, we're going to get emails now, you know, from the positivity police saying, well, we really should focus on the positives, you know, the Billy Minter signs and all that sort of jazz. That's all well and good. But ultimately, I don't go there to look at the signs. I don't go there to look at the nice bars. I go there predominantly to watch Albans City win football games. And that hasn't been happening regularly enough for my liking. And you know what? People are going to sort of, you know, come on to that aspect as well. Yes, the atmosphere is great and the vibe is good, but for how long? Because ultimately, Tavs, you said it yourself, mate. If there were injuries in the past, Ian would be straight in there with a 7-day approach on someone half decent and fill in that gap. That hasn't been happening at all. So we all know why. We can address the elephant in the room if we want, or we can just leave it for the fans to sort of put 2 and 2 together. Ultimately, this isn't good enough, and the club is suffering. The fans are suffering, and we don't want to come on week in or week out and lay into the boys, because Ian's doing that pretty much for us on his post matches now. It would be very, very interesting, Tabs, to get your take, because as you said the other week, you don't see the owners putting the plug on Ian. Has your decision changed now?
Oh, I think the mood has changed, definitely. I can't speak for them. Try not to mix with them. So I can't be certain. But you saw Ian last night, but that was he was down. He said it's his lowest point he's felt in football, and you'd imagine there's probably a bit of pressure in there as well. He's feeling it, whether it's imagined pressure or genuine. Because we were looking at his record, or club's record, whichever way you want to look at it, from say end of December last year or early December through to now, you'll be looking at that club and you're saying, good grief, that man just too well to hang on to that job. And now, on top of that, you've gone out of the FA Cup to a side 2 divisions lower, deservedly so. It wasn't a freak result. And you say, well, that manager now, he really is walking on thin ice.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's not the first time Ian's been in this situation with us, is it? I'm not talking about that first season. I'm talking about, is it 1920, the COVID season that got called off in, you know, early March. That season, we were languishing for a lot of that campaign, weren't we? And I remember some really difficult games at home and away, you know, losing 4-1 at Weymouth in the pouring rain in December, stuff like that. Really awful. So it's very interesting that I think Ian now says that this is the lowest point, and I don't know if that is because he feels like he can't change things in the squad or what it is, but it almost feels like he's almost feeling a little bit trapped in terms of how do I change things now, which is not what you want to see at all. And I think the only way, I think this is very obvious. The only way you change things now, if, you know, the manager is staying, you've got to start changing the squad drastically, because otherwise we are really struggling.
But we talk about changing the squad there, but is it a case of changing the squad and we still play the same tactics? That's not going to help us.
What I would say to you boys, what is cheaper, changing the squad or changing the bloke that's picking the squad? You know,
well,
because you can get...
Sorry, Lee, you change the manager, you're going to get new players in as well, so that's still going to be expensive.
You are, but however, what I would then point back to is when Ian first came here, he had the exact same players that Jimmy Gray had, and we went on one of the best runs of his entire guidance. You know, so yes, I buy into the fact that a new manager will ultimately bring in new players, but a change at the top does also, you know, come across, you know, new form. Sometimes things do just go off the boil, you know, and the thing is, I don't know whether the owners are brave enough to make that decision. Do they want to make that decision? If they don't, fine, then we're going to have to go along with this and see if Ian, you know, and Chris can sort of turn this around with Nobby at the helm as well. But ultimately, there's nothing to suggest that I've seen this season that that's going to happen anytime soon.
I think things have changed. I think Ian's position is greatly under threat himself. Not from talking to anybody in the club, you just feel it. You get the vibe.
But it should be, Tabs. It should be, mate.
It should.
Not because you know. It's just because if that's anybody, that could be manager A, B, or C. That is, you look at the results, and that's what people are looking at. You know, and it's just not good enough. If any one of us three were giving that level in our jobs, we wouldn't have a job. They'd get someone else in to do it better. And this is no different. It's just more high profile in a public domain, which is sad.
As Jake mentioned, we've had bad seasons in the past under Ian, and he's turned it around. Do you seriously see him being able to do it now?
I mean, interestingly, I don't know, that season that got curtailed, I'd argue that potentially our form towards the end changed a little bit because he brought in a couple of loan players and a couple of new faces, didn't he, into the squad? Sort of, the likes of the two lads from Watford that really sort of helped improve things a little bit at the time. So I just wonder if, if that is the one argument that Ian might have is I haven't had the chance to change things, to try and turn things around with so I don't know, but yeah, it's really interesting. And even in Ian's post-match interview with Neil in the Hearts Ad online, he even mentions there, about getting the sack. He's like, I have no idea what the owners are thinking right now. I'm just going to keep doing on and try and turn things around. And again, that's the first ever time I think I've ever heard him mention that. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's just a shame, really. Lee, you talk about all that digital perception. Go through the social media last night. I mean, the negativity and the supporters. I mean, I say negativity in a bad way. I mean, supporters expressing their opinions on things at the minute, just not happy at all. And the problem for the club is that after an amazing cup run last year, to get knocked out in the second qualifying round by a team like Sudbury, that's probably worst case scenario, isn't it?
Those comments on there, are they negative against, are they criticising the team or the manager or both?
Both.
I haven't looked online. Okay.
I'd say both. What do you think, Lee?
I think the majority of it is asking for Ian to go. There's a time for change now. Because ultimately people don't see economics of how the games have played out. They just see us losing when we should have lost on Saturday as well. We're just sort of like delaying the inevitable. However, fans are allowed to air their views. But what I would say, it's not like one or two now. It's on every platform and they're coming in their dozens. So, how do you curtail this? Ian's post-match was very telling for me. He was high on emotion, but bereft of ideas, and it was just, how do I do this? How do I turn this around? I don't think he would have been in many more stickier patches in his managerial career. So I don't know whether he knows. Interestingly, he's been speaking to Neil about sackings and this, that, and the other, whether he's heard, changing room chat or just chat around the ground. But he must know, he's a very intelligent man in terms of the footballing world. So he must know that owners are getting a little bit of getting sort of twitchy about it, because ultimately, as Jake said, this is all about perception for them, right? This is perception. They did well in the cup and now they've done horrendously in the cup. I wonder whether they give him the trophy run to see if we can get something back going off of that. But ultimately, how long do you want to leave it, boys? Because if we keep going along the way we are, we'll be in the Southern Prem by Christmas.
I thought it's one interesting thing in particular Ian said last night. He said about a number of times we watched Sudbury on video, and he saw them live last week himself as well. And he kept talking about, make sure we've got players behind the ball. When they counter-attack as well, make sure we've got players behind the ball. I didn't hear anything in there saying, let's go and attack them. Our plans were to attack them, either over the two games at all. And I thought that was quite telling in many ways. I thought that showed that our mentality might not have been quite right for trying to win the game. We were just thinking against his side, 2 divisions lower than us, we mustn't lose.
I think, Ian, didn't he, hinted in his pre-match interview last week how much respect he did want to show Sudbury and how difficult a game it was going to be. And that's totally fair enough. You have to remember Sudbury defeated Dartford last season, very good side. But you're right. And I think that comes from the lack of confidence in the squad in going forward and scoring goals at the minute. And I think if Ian's thinking, well, let's just try and stay in games 0-0 and then maybe pinch a goal somewhere, then that'll get us through. But it just strikes me as the squad as a whole team just really low on any confidence going forward, and they're just happy to sit back and try and sit there. And as Dave, you said, the defence and the goalkeeper, they haven't done much wrong this season, have they? But the rest of the team needs to do something, and especially when you lose you know, Devontae Stanley's probably been our best player this season, hasn't he? You know, he's been out for the last couple of games with an injury, but then we shouldn't be relying on a bloke who broke his leg a year ago and has come back with an amazing return to be our best player in the squad. There should be other players either stepping up or doing better or whatever you want to say. But overall, it just there's not really any positives at the minute, is there?
And I can I just say that given the fact that Ian's post-match was so honest last night, and he mentioned the fact that, you know, the players aren't doing what he instructed them to sort of do. They're not doing what he wants them to do. And we talk about confidence, we talk about trust. Tavs, do you think the players trust Ian Allinson now?
I haven't got a clue. Listening to that bit about getting players behind the ball last night in the interview, it sounds like they've almost done as they're told. Keep the ball, don't take a risk. And finally, in the end, somebody did take a risk and pinged the ball in from about 75 yards out, and we got a goal. Something we've been calling about for ages, of course, shooting from distance. We haven't been doing enough of it. I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm not in the dressing room. I'm not close enough to the players. In the old days, on a similar point, actually, you remember it. You less so, I think, Jake, because things have changed in recent years. You go up in a bar after the game. Well, I don't do it anymore. And the players will be up there. And they go up there voluntarily, and you chat with them, and it's great. Now, I'm told players don't go up there at all, and they try and do a rota to get them up there. What a load of nonsense. They're part of the club. They should be up there.
Yeah, after the Worthing home game, you know, lost, fair enough. But the atmosphere after the game, because I think everyone accepted Worthing a decent side, and the way they won it with an excellent goal. In the clubhouse afterwards, no issues at all. I went up there with a few Saints fans and Malcolm, and there was no Saints players to be seen, but there was the whole Worthing squad. And everyone was just chatting away really happily. The Worthing players were getting photos and hanging out with the match sponsors of the day, that stag party, who'd had fun and had a lot of alcohol. But it was a good atmosphere despite the result up there. And I think stuff like that, I think absolutely, Dave, I think you're right that the Saints squad need to start mixing with Saints fans a little bit more and get a bit of positive going, because they need the fans behind them.
But that attitude, Jake, sorry, mate, that attitude that stems down from the top, right? You know, it's like season upon season, the players win, lose or draw, they'd be in there. You know, normally after Tavs' chin, but after what he's written about him in the press. But this is an integral part of the non-league game, and I don't know whether they think it's beneath them now to come and mix with like the minions in the bar afterwards. But ultimately, that was one of the romantic concepts of non-league football. The fact you could go into the bar and shake hands and buy a drink for the players. But yeah, that was one of the reasons why I fell in love with these players who I still hold on such high pedestals now. You know, your Clarkies and your Muddies and, you know, and your Lee Clarks and Hakeems and all of those players, you know. And I find that I find it sad that it's got to that situation. And okay, the thing is, we should all share the wins and share the defeats as a club, not as a team, not as a unit of fans, just together. And I think, you know, another one for the positivity police tick is that's where we should come together as a collective. So if you want to start building bridges and all that in the emails, get the players up in the bar, and let's all, you know, commiserate together or celebrate together, because that is about what being Albans City is all about, being together.
Be nice to see it happen. Another thing about, will the club invest in this squad now? We know the club's done really well. It's made a lot of money the last 2 or 3 years, and we went into last season.
Have they? You have not mentioned it at all, Tabs, for the last 2 days.
Well, there's more to come, Lee. There's more. Sit comfortably. 400,000 odd in the bank at the start of last season. We had a terrific season. Big gates, big cup run. Now the FA Cup run, ignore the gates of 4,000, whatever income they would have brought in. Just from the TV money and the prize fund, we've made 151,000 last season from the FA Cup. It would have been a lot higher with those other things and sponsorship. This year, apart from the 2 gates of his last 2 games, £1,125, isn't it? So your manager now goes in, look, we need some more money. And they say, how much you brought in this year in the FA Cup? Oh, blimey. But of course, you shouldn't budget for FA Cup money in your budget anyway. because anything you get from that should be a bonus. I mean, you should use it wisely.
No, you're right. But like Lee said at the start of the podcast, that full time whistle, that Forest Green game is where it all ended, isn't it? After that Forest Green game, we should have invested in the squad when things went a bit sour. Should have put a bit of money in. We discussed it all of last season, didn't we? Just didn't happen, and it doesn't look like it's happened over the summer either. And it's
good
just
business though,
unbelievable.
Jake, good business, mate. Is that when it is rich, you know, you keep your powder dry for occasions just like this. When it is a little bit, you know, bereft of ideas, and the product that you are supplying isn't living up to it. That's when you get in the reserves. You take out the cash and you start investing wisely, granted, but the owners will only respond when when it's getting down to stage where it's costing them money like it was previously, and also when gates are down. You know, it's all well and good bringing in these new initiatives in bars and whatnot, but when you're getting dicked on in front of like 400 people again, boys, let's see them get a bit, you know, rapid then in terms of their responses, because it won't be long if there has to be a change somewhere along the line. Yes, no, until things go like the back it was under the bad days of David Howe. Surely, when you know it won't be long before we're playing in front of 400 fans, and we're losing to Swindon Supermarine on like a wet Tuesday night.
Of course, we haven't got a home game now till 8th of October when Chippenham Town come to the park. They're not the best supported away club in the world. But after that, it's Dartford. They're not having a great season compared to what they would expect. Dulwich, a side that's struggling after that Weymouth, bottom of the league. So you go through to Boxing Day. Boxing Day, Bath City? That can't be right. We haven't got many really big games coming up. So the only way we're going to get these fans back is to start winning all these games against the lower sides. If we keep going along as we are, the crowds surely are just going to keep dwindling, aren't they?
Yeah, I agree. I think the next two games, both away, that we'll discuss, two teams in and around us really at the minute, or at least Farnborough, you know, behind us. It's important now, isn't it? You've got to pick up next two games. You've got to pick up some positive results before the Chippenham game, because otherwise you're going to be going into that with, well, nothing positive to talk about at all.
We will, though. We will, Jake. We've been told. We've been told. So positivity.
Right, well, what would you do for Saturday, then? Well, let's go back to last night. What changes would you have made? He dropped Liam Soul. Hardly surprising. Totally anonymous Saturday. Would you have made any other changes?
I'd have brought... Sorry, Dave.
No, you go, Jake. Go on.
I'd have brought George Morrall in for Joe Neal. It might have been a risk, but it's one of the only options really had in the squad. That's another thing. The squad and the bench at the minute is so lacking in depth, really. I don't know what more you can do. I think it was good to see him and Ash come on, but by all accounts, Dave, you said he didn't look fit, really. And apart from that, what else do you honestly do to the squad, really, at the minute? I don't know.
Buy some players.
Yeah, probably.
The thing about Monash, you wouldn't expect him to be totally match fit.
No.
I think Ian said he'd please get 71 minutes out of him, and he didn't look match fit, but we've got to stick with him because hopefully he's going to be one of our shining lights. George Morrall, that's the intriguing one, isn't it? To suddenly thrust him into an FA Cup tie like that. Poor old Joe Neal, everybody likes him, likes his effort and everything, but he's not creating goals for other players, and he's certainly not scoring, none in 25 games now. Ian's done well to trust him that long, really, give him that long a run, and you're right, it's surprisingly still in that side. Putting George in, it would have been a gamble, but you know, try it 45 minutes, why not? Rather than just give him a few minutes at the end again.
I think, like Lee said, though, now is the time. You've got to invest in the squad. Buy some players, please. Just do something, anything, just anything at all, just to give some support to Sean. Strengthen midfield, get a creative player, someone that knows how to go forward with the ball would be lovely. Please, just do something.
Well, on that note, 7 substitutes named these last 2 games. And David Noble wasn't amongst them on either game. So unless he's carrying a knock, have we finally accepted that's the end of his career now? Because it was after that first game, it was crying out for him yesterday, again, even for just an hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, I would take a half fit David Noble over pretty much all that bench. But given the fact that I think he's pretty much called it a day, isn't he, really? Because unless it's an emergency, but if yesterday wasn't an emergency, I'm not entirely sure what was. So, I mean, to be honest with you, Nobby's been fantastic. And if he can inflict any sort of wisdom at all on the players around him through his coaching, then absolutely, that's fine with me. But the time has now come. We've got to look forward to Saturday. We can, we can pick holes in the last 2 weeks as much as we like. But looking ahead to Farnborough, and it's going back to what Jake said, isn't it sad that we're not even the end of September and we're talking about, the vitality and importance of games now, about picking up points, because that's where we are. And that is the hole the players have got us into currently. So Farnborough, there's got to be a change in, personnel, but also attitude, Dave. You spoke earlier on about the positivity, and there's just this attitude of not getting beat in games. Well, you know what? Hasn't really served us too well so far, has it, mate?
2 wins in what we had now, 9 games. You ain't going to change that statistic by trying not to lose games.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Ian's post-match, the players would have watched it, I'm sure. He said what he said last night, and now he's got to, try and get them behind him into Saturday's game. And again, it's not like there's lots of options in the squad to change things up. So surely there's going to be some players out there he's going to have to trust that he said last night couldn't do the job.
Jake, do you reckon the positivity police pulled Ian to one side after that and said, Gaff, you can't say that, mate. You can't say that. It's very negative. Can't say that, mate. Come on.
Well, I think a lot of people, outside the club and maybe some inside club would have been glad to hear a bit of reality, I think, from Ian at that point, because it's, it's just... But I just don't know what we change in terms of Saturday. Lee, we say personnel, but what do we honestly do? I'm not sure at the minute, unless there's going to be 1 or 2 miraculously fit. I think Devontae is going to be fit, isn't he, by all accounts? But apart from that, I mean, love Devontae, but I don't think he's going to totally change things. But then Saturday,
put him up front, mate. Put him up front. See what happens.
But Saturday is probably going to be another type of just make sure we stay in the game, don't concede, then try and snatch a goal from somewhere. I mean, I don't see how else we can play things at the minute, because it just doesn't seem to be working.
Tabs is looking a forlorn figure over there. Look at him. Look.
Hey, we're going to be fine Saturday because they play in blue and yellow. We haven't lost to a team in blue and yellow since last night. And they are below us in the table, by the way. Playing a game more. We've got 2 points in hand. We're sitting comfortably, so we can go to Cherrywood Road full of optimism. Obviously, we're unbeaten away from home in the league. Why are we so miserable? Apart from Jake being the default setting, but there you go.
I mean, those are fair points, and I think Farnborough won, didn't they, last night in the cup? They beat Hayes in the Edding, was it 2-0? I think they've. The thing is, Farnborough have decent expectations of the season. They've put in a little bit of money into that squad. They'll be looking to kick on, and I think we just
it's a novel thing, mate, isn't it?
Well, I know we need to just try and make sure we don't suffer defeat on Saturday. To be honest, I think that's key.
Well, that point you made there, Jake, was interesting. About they had an FA Cup replay, but 5 of us from National League South had replays against lower league opposition last night. And if you missed your chance in the first game below a side, it's unusual to get away with it in the second. Only one National League side last night went out to lower league opposition. The other 4 at our level all won. Again, it speaks volumes about the way things are.
Yeah, although Bath only just snuck through. But yeah,
yes, every time.
Yeah. You are right, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're feeling negative. How's the squad and the atmosphere around the club going into training tomorrow night? They must feel absolutely rock bottom at the minute. I'd have thought
buzzing.
I disagree. I don't think negativity. I think we're realistic. We've looked at the things. We watch the games. I think you two go occasionally. We watch the games. We see the way the squad is going, the way we're playing. We're just reviewing that as it is. It's not as if we're winning 6 games and saying, "Oh, we should have won 7 or whatever." We're just reviewing what is out there.
And it's pretty somber stuff, isn't it? It's pretty demoralising. But I know that we'll get another email, gents. Can we look at your tone and how you approach the podcast? Well, yes, maybe sort of 5 and then we might be getting a bit more positive. Anyway, on to Farnborough, David. If you do some predictions,
Right.
Yes.
Go on then. I mean, you both got it hopelessly wrong last time we were on. Neither of you predicted 2 games would be postponed. But right, go on then, Lee. Farnborough and Braintree Town next Tuesday.
Braintree, we win. Absolutely. You know, it's got the Harding effect. No problem with that at all. Farnborough, I draw at best. 1-1. Braintree, I'm going for 2-0.
Interesting.
Jake, you always say we win, so off you go.
I was going to go 1-1 Farnborough on Saturday, so I'll go 2-2 instead. And Braintree, I'll go 1-0 Saints.
They're having a good season, aren't they? They've turned it around there.
Braintree?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is they start,
chairman.
don't know whether you know him, used to hang around Clarence Park a little bit. He gets his wallet out and he signs a few players, normally like, you know, fringe players from Colchester and Norwich and Southend. And then what happens is they turn out to be half decent players and then they stay for the rest of the season. And they win some football games. Brilliant concept. Never, ever catch on.
I think Lee's been in the pub this afternoon.
I wish I bloody have, mate.
Oh, dear me.
And on that note,
Wow.
I think we're done.
Obviously, now we know supporters have got a very, very strong opinion on how the last 10 days have gone. So, and we've had some emails and we've had some messages. But if you do want to get in contact with us again, young Jacob, who looks 57, is going to give us the Twitter handle. Jacob?
Yeah, at a Podful of Saints, please. There's also an email address. Do let us know how you're feeling about things at the minute.
You have done.
Yeah.
You think I'm bad? We can't publish half of the stuff that we've been sent.
That's true.
It's pretty bad.
But yeah, God. But hopefully things will turn around, right?
Yes,
Of course.
Well,
from myself, Jacob, and David, and the Positivity Police would like to thank you for watching this podcast. It's been emotional, and we shall see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Before you go, Lee, who signed that shirt you're wearing?
This is Chris Seaby's shirt.
Oh, is it? Right, okay.
It is. It's not just me just sort of like scrawling all over it because I'm bored.
Well, I wondered if it was your daughter having a go,
To be fair, I think her handwriting is a little bit better than Chris's, but anyway.
Well, on that note.
Good bloke, Seeves. Right, we'll see you down at Cherrywood Road Saturday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.